As my quest to review 200 movies from 2021 continues on, we're now in September of 2021 for movies I have not yet gotten to review, and that includes a Martin Scorsese produced film called The Card Counter and an actioner with Frank Grillo and Gerard Butler called Copshop. Let's talk movies. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to my movie reviews for September films of 2021, going through month by month the last few movies here that I have not yet gotten to review in 2021 on my quest to 200, and then at that point I'm going to do my best and worst of 2021 movie review episode, whatever, video. And I've actually watched all of these movies now for 2021, but just catching up sort of on the last few months of reviews. We're going to do this one. We have an October one, and then November, December, going to sort of combine those into one video. So there's only about 12 movies, I guess, after this video. But we're going to cover 5 of them here. And these are just movies that I have not yet reviewed. I did review a lot of movies that came out in September already. But for this one, we're going to take a look at these 5, including 2 that I had not really even heard of until a few weeks ago when I was trying to get to my 200. I found one from Germany that was put in for the Oscars, but it did not make the cut for International Feature this year. But it starred Dan Stevens, who I know from the Beauty and the Beast live-action movie. Many people may know him from Downton Abbey, so I thought, all right, well, that could be interesting. And then we've got this other film called Mogul Mowgli, which stars Riz Ahmed. I'm a huge convert of his after watching him in The Sound of Metal, so I checked that one out. We also have the Frank Grillo, Gerard Butler action film that I mentioned, Copshop. We've got a horror for the family in Nightbooks over on Netflix. But first, we will start off with The Card Counter. And like I mentioned, this is produced by Martin Scorsese, and it is written and directed by Paul Schrader, who has come into his own the last 10 to 15 years as a director. He directed this great movie, First Reformed, with Ethan Hawke, but his relationship with Scorsese goes back decades. He wrote or co-wrote some of the early classics from Scorsese, including Raging Bull and Taxi Driver. So obviously sort of repaying the favor there as Scorsese comes on as producer. But this stars Oscar Isaac, Tiffany Haddish, and Ty Sheridan, with Willem Dafoe as well in a small role. So Oscar Isaac plays this guy, William Tell, which may or may not be his real name. We'll find out. He's a gambler who taught himself at a young age how to count cards, and he was in military prison for 8 years. That's sort of where he honed his skills with that. And seeking to avoid attention, he either does not stay at the casino. He does not bet very high, so he doesn't win these big prizes, but he bets pretty much every night of his life at different casinos and wins, sizable portions enough to live off of. At one of these casinos, he encounters La Linda, who is an acquaintance from the gambling world, and she basically has this group of investors who backs gamblers for a portion of their winnings, and she approaches him to sort of pique his interest on, okay, well, maybe we can team up. And at the same time, William Tell meets this young man who is in his, I guess, early 20s, late teens, played by Ty Sheridan, named Kirk, and he sort of takes him under his wing. But, as we go along here, problems will arise, and there you go. It is in not quite the length of a Martin Scorsese movie, especially, when you think of gambling, you think of Casino, and that was a very long movie. But this one actually clocks in at under 2 hours, but it still does have a Scorsese feel to it. It's got sort of that touch that you can tell, okay, maybe it wasn't directed by Scorsese, but this guy certainly worked with him for a long time. You can tell that it comes off of the screen. But this movie goes in some odd directions that I think were to its detriment. I don't think most of them really worked. Oscar Isaac is fine. I wouldn't say it's his best role, but I watched this movie a couple of days after he had hosted a recent SNL episode, so I was sort of like in this Oscar Isaac mood, and I know Moon Knight is now on Disney Plus, so Oscar Isaac sort of a hot property right now, and this one sort of got pushed aside. It was released in theaters, but just briefly, and didn't really get a lot of buzz on it, which is surprising, seeing the pedigree of the people behind it. But he was fine in this. I think a couple of the big stumbling blocks were in the script, and then as well with the Tiffany Haddish character, La Linda. So we'll talk about the script in a second, but let me talk about Tiffany Haddish. So I reviewed another one of her 2021 films just a few weeks ago in I think it was the March and April wrap up or something, called Here Today. It was her and Billy Crystal, and that was, like a touching drama. I just am not sure where she's going to end up falling in the drama camp, because I think she's very funny and I love her comedy movies. In fact, I reviewed another one of hers recently in the 2021 wrap up called Bad Trip, which was a Netflix original. So this is actually the third Tiffany Haddish one I've done in just a few weeks. And that was a comedy, but I really enjoy her comedic work, and I think she can be a good dramatic actress. I saw that in a little movie called The Kitchen from a few years ago. It didn't really do a whole lot, but Melissa McCarthy was in it, Tiffany Haddish, and it was not a comedy. It was, very drama heavy, and I thought she was great in it. The movie itself was okay, but here they've given her this character that I'm not sure she makes a whole lot of sense, and then they have this love story with Tiffany Haddish and Oscar Isaac, and I'm not sure if I even didn't believe it. It just weighed the story down, and it was completely unnecessary to everything else that was going on in this picture. So I didn't really like that portion, and it's not necessarily her fault. She's okay in the role, but I think the script let both of them down in that regard. And then the way this movie ends, we think it's sort of going in one direction, and then about 2/3 of the way through, it flips, and it's now about something completely different. And the end of the movie, I think, will be very divisive for people. For me, it did not quite work. So this one is definitely a disappointing mixed bag. I leave the card counter with a C-. And you'll learn about these reviews if this is my first of the 2021 wrap-ups that you're watching. These are just going to be like 3-4 minute reviews. We're not going to do these long, 8 to 10 minuters, because these movies have been out at this point for many months, and just trying to sort of put my thoughts out there in a video form. So I did say, yes, I reviewed these movies, all 200 of them, but, gives you a little hint on what the movies are about and whether to avoid them or not. So Nightbooks is next. This is over on Netflix, and it was a Netflix original that came out this month. I'm going in order of release, by the way. So this was right in the middle, September 15th. And it stars my good buddy, Winslow Fegley. I talk about him all the time. He was Timmy Failure a couple of years ago, one of the great Disney Plus original films. And ever since then, I've been following his career and watching all of his stuff. He's very funny. But this is not so much of a funny movie, but more of a horror. This is a horror, thriller, family-friendly movie, though it is rated PG. It's in the vein of like a Goosebumps or something. And he plays this boy, Alex, who is from Brooklyn, and he writes these scary stories. But his parents have concerns about his mental health with all these stories, so he swears, okay, I will never write one again. So he grabs his Nightbooks, which is his collection of these stories, and sneaks out of his apartment and tries to burn the book. But before he reaches the furnace room, there's an apartment with an open door that sort of lures him in, and we meet the witch there, played by Kristen Ritter, and she basically holds him captive until he tells her different stories every night. We do have Lydia Jewett as well as this girl, Yasmin, who was trapped and lured in by the same witch years ago. So this movie has a lot going for it. Number one, Kristen Ritter is a hoot. She's having a blast in this character, and as a result as well, her look is really cool. The costume design here is great. The set design is very good as well. If we could sort of move over to the Alex stories for a little bit. So each story, sort of has a different feel to it and a different set piece with it, and they're a lot of fun. Some of them are a little basic, but it works for the story, and so this movie is a lot of fun to watch. But getting back to Kristen Ritter, she's having a blast in this role, and I've liked her, from Apartment 23, and she did Jessica Jones. I like her the most when she is sort of going all in on something and just, having a hoot with the role, and this is one that she can definitely kind of sink her teeth into. And then for his part, Winslow Fegley doing great as the young storyteller as well, and sort of kowtowing to the witch's demands of what a story needs to have and what a story needs to be. So that's a lot of fun too. My biggest complaint, I guess, with the movie is that it does take a little while to get going. Once we sort of enter this world, it's great. And, with each new story, we get more invested, and the stories themselves are fun. But it does take a little while to get there, and I wish they sort of pushed that along a little more. We could have maybe had room for one more of his stories. But I do think this definitely belongs in that conversation of the family-friendly horror movies. You've got Goosebumps, I mentioned already. Coraline, I think, is actually a little too scary for the PG set, but you could throw that one in there as well. And this one definitely, I think, deserves to be part of the conversation. Nightbooks, for me, gets an A-. All right, so up next, we're going to talk about Copshop, and this is an action film starring, I've talked about it already a couple of times, Frank Grillo and Gerard Butler. And essentially here, this is kind of your classic, like, 70s type cop action drama movie. The basic premise is that a lethal assassin is out to get this con artist. The con artist is played by Frank Grillo, and the assassin played by Gerard Butler, rather. And he is hiding out inside a small town police station, but when the hitman turns up at said precinct, an unsuspecting rookie cop finds herself caught in the crosshairs, and she's played by Alexis Louder. So this one kind of came and went at theaters. I did not get to see it there, so I watched it at home. It's now available on Peacock. And I sort of thought, when I saw the poster for this, and, I think maybe I saw a trailer, I was like, this is just going to be a very generic cop movie. Like, we got it. These were a dime a dozen. What, sort of stands this aside from everything else? And actually, this turned out to be a little bit of a surprise. Now, I said in one of my earlier reviews, too, from, I think, March and April again, Frank Grillo is just one good action movie, away from being kind of a star here. I reviewed his movie Boss Level, which I thought was horrible, but he was okay in it. But he needed to find the right project. And look, this obviously wasn't a hit, so maybe this isn't the one either. But in terms of storytelling, in terms of his performance, I think this is the one people might look to and say, okay, this was kind of a star-making turn for Frank Grillo. And I always sort of shy away from Gerard Butler movies, too, because most of them are not very good either. But they've created a really good kind of twisty movie here with a lot of interesting dialogue, some cool characters, and, a pretty sparse set design. Most of this movie does take place within the precinct walls. So, it does give us that kind of claustrophobic, way about it. And I think it worked for it. I really do. So this was a bit of a surprise for me. Like I said, it really harkens back to those 70s and early 80s cop dramas, which, I don't know, maybe we don't see them much anymore because it's all about, like, Liam Neeson, out for revenge, and there's shoot-em-ups and stuff. And yes, there's some gunplay here, but I think it's definitely more intelligent than a lot of the ones out there. This was definitely a surprise for me. The biggest drawback for it is that it does not do anything new. It's a nice throwback, but there's nothing really new about this movie. It just sort of stands as is, and if you like that kind of stuff, I think you'll find that this is one of those nice movies that maybe they don't really make that many of anymore, and that's nice. But other than that, it's not going to reinvent the wheel here. So I leave Copshop with a B. But yeah, definitely one to check out if you're into action movies. It certainly surprised me. So next we're going to talk about I'm Your Man. This is a German sci-fi romantic comedy, which we don't see a lot of that anymore. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it was selected by Germany as its international feature at the Oscars. It did not get the nomination, but slight spoiler for my grade, this is, I think, probably the best foreign film I've seen this year other than Flea, which was nominated in that category and a few others. But Dan Stevens, is featured here as this robot companion. And the main star here is Dr. Alma Felser, who is played by Maren Eggert. And she is an archaeologist who decides to take on this sort of test program. She arrives at this dance club early on in the movie where an employee introduces her to the Dan Stevens character, Tom, and she starts kind of quizzing him about his life and all of this, and we learn very quickly as the audience, oh, he is just a robot. He is an AI, and we're now testing out these models for full human companionship, and she's to live with him for, I think it's 28 days or something, and then report back. But a lot of things happen in that 28 days, as you could imagine, and you get the movie. So the sci-fi element comes, in the robot part, but this is actually at its core more of a romance movie, I would think, than anything. And we don't really get a ton of rom-coms these days. I talked about that when I reviewed the Jennifer Lopez movie, Marry Me. So it is a little bit of an anomaly in that regard. But I also do think it has a lot of interesting things to say about artificial intelligence and robots sort of becoming human and becoming sentient and that sort of thing. Maybe, again, maybe not ground that we have not tread upon in more sort of think piece sci-fi movies like Ex Machina or something like that. But I think for a romance movie, this really is unique in its presentation. And I think it will check a lot of boxes of who can enjoy this movie. Because I think if you're a rom-com fan, you'll enjoy it. I think if you're even like a drama fan, you might enjoy it because it does have some dramatic elements to it. And then certainly if you're a sci-fi fan, I think you'll find this a little bit interesting. If nothing else, it'll be something a little bit different in the sci-fi realm. So like I said, other than probably Flea, this is, I think, the best international film I have seen all year. I really enjoyed it. And Dan Stevens was great, by the way, as the robot. He like barely blinked, and he was really just sort of playing this role up. And it was not like the 80s, robot with the, static voice. No, it was a very, very well done, current day robot, because with the technology now, they do have a lot of things where, yeah, we're almost to that point, I feel like. So I thought this was very interesting. I'm Your Man gets an A- from me. So we will close with this other movie that was very under the radar called Mogul Mowgli. And this is available on one of the streamers. I want to say maybe Prime Video. But it stars Riz Ahmed as Zed, who is a British Pakistani rapper based out of New York, and before his big tour begins, he's right on the cusp of being a huge, pop star and household name. He is diagnosed with a degenerative autoimmune disease, so he has to return to see his Pakistani family in London, give them the news, and sort of work out some past issues with the family, and that's where a lot of the drama comes from in this movie. So like I mentioned up top, Riz Ahmed is somebody whose career I am all in on after The Sound of Metal, which was my #1 movie of 2020. I'm like, okay, anything this guy has a part of, I'm going to check out. And in fact, one of the November-December movies we're going to talk about is another Riz Ahmed film in an upcoming video. But this one, here's what was weird to me about this. Okay, so Sound of Metal, you just heard my description for this movie, Mogul Mowgli. Sound of Metal is about a heavy metal drummer who becomes deaf in like the first scene and has to figure out, okay, well, I can't perform anymore. I can't hear, so what is my life going to be? Who am I now? All that sort of thing. This is, there's typecasting, where you're playing a similar character, and then this is like the same movie. I was floored that Riz Ahmed, and he co-wrote the script too, so, and maybe this was in the works before Sound of Metal, I don't know, but, this is almost the exact same story, and that, okay, maybe he's not going to die very quickly. It's not an autoimmune disease, but he goes deaf. His whole life is changing. His music career ends immediately. And here we see basically the same thing, except, a quicker demise, I guess. But it just is mind-blowing to me that he's playing such a similar character for basically his next movie. So, yeah, that part really threw me. And in addition, this is a far inferior film. Sound of Metal is like way up there. This movie is okay, and I think maybe with a different actor, I wouldn't have had that association. I could have graded it slightly higher, not much probably, because there's a lot of script elements that just didn't work for me, including sort of just being all over the place in terms of tone of the movie, because he's trying to reconnect with his family, and through that there's a lot of flashbacks that I'm not sure if they really worked. I get that they were trying to do, an emotional heartstring kind of thing. wasn't really working for me necessarily, so that was a bit of a negative. And his performance is fine, but yeah, it's certainly not up to the Sound of Metal level for me. So yeah, a big disappointment. Again, maybe this grade would be slightly higher with a different actor. I wouldn't have those associations, but for me, Mogul Mowgli just is average with a C plus. All right, so that will do it for the September movies. We've got 6 more to talk about in October. 6 more to talk about in a November-December combo video, and then we will do the best and worst of 2021. Now that the Oscars are over, sort of got to put a wrap at some point on the movies of the previous year, so we will do that very, very soon here on the channel. So thanks for watching. I'll see everybody next time. Bye.